So as you might expect, narrative consistency is essential for games that want to tell a satisfying and engaging story. Sometimes the tale being told will be entirely new, and in other instances will be a retelling of events that came before. But while this is often welcomed, it can sometimes come at the cost of consistency. Retconning the events of previous games is enticing if a new, better idea is had, but sometimes a game's conclusion will also opt to discredit the events of the very experience that it's trying to wrap up. Small changes to continuity are plentiful in the AAA space, but sometimes companies opt to retcon an entire game or series, which makes for some pretty strange events. And that's what we're here to talk about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video games that retconned everything. Number 10. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. With most entries in the seasoned Zelda franchise, there are a handful of things that usually come with each release. A cute green tunic, the iconic Master Sword, and heart container pieces that litter the land. So when Breath of the Wild did something different, a lot of people were shocked to their core. But there was another game that changed, well, pretty much everything, and also was probably one of the most unique of all. While most mainline Zelda games are set in Hyrule, 1993's Link's Awakening's tale unfolds on the charming and diverse Koholint Island. Full to the brim with harsh obstacles for our hero to overcome and kooky characters to meet, it was all rather different from the norm. And there's a reason for that. Upon reaching the game's conclusion, it comes to pass that the events of the game, from the surprisingly complex dungeons to the Windfish himself, are merely a fragment of Link's imagination. A dream to be had while floating out at sea, Link's Awakening completely wipes away everything that the player thought would be another of the hero of Hyrule's valiant quests. The adorable characters that he met and the luscious environments players spent hours learning all about are actually rendered completely irrelevant. Number 9. DMC Devil May Cry. In 2013, DMC Devil May Cry released two, let's just call them mixed reviews. On the one hand, its presentation and combat system was superb, but the direction it takes with the iconic Devil May Cry characters was far too bold for many players' tastes. It was a significant departure from what came before, and deviating too far from the formula for an already established franchise is a slippery slope. Ninja Theory's failed reboot uses the Devil May Cry lore as they saw fit, which is both part of its charm and a huge reason for having so many critics. It changes the aloof, pizza-loving Dante to a more edgy, nihilistic character, and uses Virgil, a fantastic, lawful evil character, as an honorless antagonist. Lifting a handful of each character's traits and using them in a way that angered most fans of the series, it truly didn't feel like it was in keeping with the rest of the games that came before. This was perhaps why new fans were usually the ones who found the most enjoyment from it. The franchise quickly reverted back to the original timeline for Devil May Cry 5, but DMC's damage was done, flagrantly retconning the events of the first 4 games like they were utterly disposable. Number 8. Ratchet & Clank 2016. Insomniac's most iconic duo have had success on most of Sony's home consoles. It's a franchise that has been a mainstay in the platforming genre for what feels like decades, so when the company decided that a fresh start was in order in 2016, it was quite the surprise. Retelling the origins of the partnership was a delicate task to undertake, as players will likely have so much nostalgia attached to the first game. However, what resulted was a game that more than justified its existence, paving the way for Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart to harness the power of the PS5. Now, this is a franchise that doesn't usually place too much emphasis on storytelling, so when the PS4 exclusive game presented an all-new beginning for the franchise, there weren't actually that many frustrated fans. In truth, there's no real need to play the PS2 original now, if we're being honest, as it gives a far more compelling explanation for Ratchet & Clank's unlikely friendship. In replacing the old in favour of the new, it retcons everything that the first game had to offer, but did so for the best. Number 7. Final Fantasy VII Remake. While the 1997 original is still thoroughly worth a play, Final Fantasy VII Remake tells Cloud, Barrett, Tifa and Aerith's story to new audiences in a rather beautiful way. Taking place only in Midgar and bringing Avalanche's desperate fight against mega corporation Shinra to the PlayStation 4, it also reminded existing fans what they loved about the original to begin with. However, just by existing, it inherently retcons the entire original game. As all mainline Final Fantasy titles are self-contained, the events that unfold in the remake only serve to replace what came before it. Now, when the remake saga concludes, it will bear enough narrative similarities with the original and showcase a more updated visuals to effectively render the PS1 game redundant. Now, this is by no means a bad thing, as the stunning visuals and near flawless combat system did well to bring such a well-established story into modern times and increase the tale's longevity. Returning to its blocky textures and ATB battle system will absolutely still be worth it for fans of retro gaming, but Final Fantasy VII Remake rids the narrative need to do so, especially as Final Fantasy VIII presents an entirely different story. Number 6. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. While the game and level design was hugely different to Guns of the Patriots, the Phantom Pain's most significant retcon was the use of its characters. All through the main campaign, completing side ops or trundling along the main story, players are led to believe that their experience was adding to the heroic tale of Big Boss, a big boy mainstay of the series. However, little did they know that Mission 46 would subvert their expectations incredibly harshly. In a twist that has now become infamous, it's revealed that the protagonist of the game isn't Big Boss, but the medic that assisted Paz and Snake during the conclusion of Ground Zeroes. Big Boss is actually introduced in the hospital at the beginning of the game, and every mission undertaken, cassette tape listened to and soldier acquired was done so by a man with just a fraction of Big Boss's reputation. It's a shocking revelation and effectively retcons the entire game's story from Big Boss's list of accomplishments. It was the decision that angered many, but in the grand tale that is Metal Gear Solid, it tied together pretty well, or at least as well as could be expected. Number 5. Life is Strange. Don't Nod's first big hit was Life is Strange, a game that told the story of Max and her journey through school while also attempting to stay in control of a newfound ability, and that ability is that she can rewind time. As she finds her footing at Blackwell Academy in the fictional town of Arcadia Bay, it becomes clear that rewinding time is very useful when the game's plot picks up steam. However, this creates a narrative flaw that persists throughout. Decisions often feel meaningless as there's usually a way to redo them and change the outcome, so the experience kind of lacks any flow or consistency. It's still enjoyable though, but Life is Strange is a game that is full of retcons, with some being subtle and insignificant and others having huge implications on the story. From saving Chloe's life by triggering an alarm to prevent a camera from breaking as it falls on the floor, the core narrative doesn't carry as much weight. Eventually a conclusion arrives, but looking back at all the times that Max used her power to change events kind of makes the journey feel unevenly segmented and at points possibly a little bit unsatisfying. Number 4. Mass Effect 3. While the Mass Effect series is beloved for its epic storyline, wonderful characters and impressive world building, the third entry is perhaps more well known for all the wrong reasons. While the main narrative of Mass Effect 3 was littered with epic moments and solid resolutions to pressing questions, the final hour of the trilogy was perhaps the series' lowest moment. The ending of Mass Effect 3 is notoriously bad, let's face it, and has a well-earned reputation for its poor writing and haphazard approach to character decisions. Marooning the Normandy's crew on an unknown planet while Shepard's fate is unknown is frustrating to say the least, and what would come from the conclusion effectively retcons all of the beautiful lore and storytelling that propped the franchise up for so long. The mass relays are all destroyed, and all the time the series spent telling its players about the coexistence of alien species is rendered pointless. It needlessly wipes away the whole point of Shepard's quest and means that the Asari, Turians, Quarians and the like can never live in harmony with one another anymore. So yeah, in short, far from the happy ending that players were expecting. Number 3. Final Fantasy XIV. In 2022, Final Fantasy XIV is widely considered to be one of the finest massive multiplayer online games ever made. Its characters are simply unforgettable, its social elements are expertly implemented, and the main storyline is better than it has any right to be. It's a success in so many ways, and many believe that this was always the case. But you know what? It wasn't. Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, released in 2013 to masses of critical acclaim. That's true, yet this was 3 years after the first attempt at the game failed miserably. Now long since abandoned, the game's 1.0 version hit digital storefronts in 2010 and was quickly panned by gamers everywhere. The game was lacking in content, and so many of its essential components were just broken, so Square Enix went back to the drawing board and announced that they would relaunch the game when it was truly ready. Narratively, A Realm Reborn retcons everything the original game had, while also acknowledging its existence. 1.0 is merely used now as a plot device to bring players to the game as we know it today. It was a retcon that was more than justified, as Final Fantasy XIV continues to impress all these years later. Number 2. Mortal Kombat 2011. NetherRealm Studios is a master at crafting a competitive fighting game with presentational flourishes that rival high-budget action-adventure titles. Mortal Kombat is definitely its crowning franchise, and while it's been going for 30 years, it hasn't actually kept the same story going since the arcade original. Released in 2011 and given the simple name of Mortal Kombat, the series rebooted to much critical and commercial success. Now referred to as Mortal Kombat 9, the game retcons much of the events of the first 3 games in favour of starting over. The franchise has a plethora of beloved characters, settings and story threads that were explored explored in the 2011 reboot. When the company decided to start fresh, they did so with the knowledge that they just had a toy box filled with interesting elements that could make it a worthwhile restart, and a justified retcon of what came before. Mortal Kombat truly retconned everything about the beloved first 3 games, but it gave players, new and old, a better and more substantial experience. Future games have springboarded off of its success, and so retconning what came before was a stroke of genius from the developers. And number 1, Wolfenstein: The New Order. Wolfenstein is one of the first-person shooter genre's greatest franchises. From its beginnings on the Apple II computer through to the iconic Wolfenstein 3D up to the most recent games, it gained notoriety for its graphic violence and rather liberal approach to dispatching Nazi enemies. It's glorious and found success because of its mature tone, so when the franchise rebooted to mixed reviews in 2009, many were actually surprised. Yet another restart happened just 5 years later in 2014, which was far more acclaimed, but by doing its best to be loved by gamers, it retconned pretty much everything the 2009 game introduced. Retconning the events of the previous game was actually a necessity, as it needed to place its story in the same era of history in order to make it feel like a true Wolfenstein game. BJ Blazkowicz is once again the protagonist, as he has been before, and themes are shared between games, but with a fresh new story and new side characters, meaning that the retcon of other games from existence is obvious for all to see. But it's for the best though, as The New Order is easily one of the finest games in this series. And there we go, my friends, those were 10 video games that retconned everything. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, and it'd be great to see you over there, my friends. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well with love and respect, my friend, because you deserve all of the best things in life, alright? And don't let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. You are a massive ledge, and you deserve all of the best things in life, alright? Like love, happiness, and success. Now go out there and smash your life goals today. I believe in you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.